Welcome to The Forum, your modern-day coffee house, where ideas can be birthed, exchanged, and wrestled with. We celebrate questions, conversation, and reason as powerful tools to enlighten hearts and transform minds, shaping a new generation of thinkers, innovators, and pioneers. We're glad you're here, so pull up a chair and let's begin.
So this morning, I wanted to talk about nostalgia because it's something that keeps cropping up in my frame of reference. And apparently today, would you believe, is International Time Travel Day, whatever that is. And I'm just going to be really honest, I found it quite tricky prepping for this talk this week, and I think it's partly because it's something I still kind of deal with. And I don't want to kind of present nostalgia as a massively negative thing, but I think it can be tricky when we can get stuck in it, and I'm going to share a little bit about that this morning. But if you look at the origins of nostalgia, apparently nostalgia was actually once seen as an illness. It was a medical illness. And a lady called Adrienne Mattei, a Vancouver-based journalist and editor, did an essay all about the history of the word nostalgia. And in the late 1600s, Swiss medical student Johannes Hofer noticed a pattern in his patients who were living far from home. They were showing symptoms of homesickness. And he coined the medical term nostalgia in 1688. Now, the word nostalgia is actually derived from two Greek words. The first being nostos. And nostos, when I looked it up, I've got it on the screen, is about the homecoming of a hero, a hero's return. And then the second part of the word is based on the Greek word alga, which is about pain. And I thought that was interesting. The Greek spirits of pain and suffering of both the mind and body. And it's a physical and mental pain. And it's also closely related to the god of mourning, which I thought was interesting. I mean, it's really cheery when you read it. I can't read it backwards, though. So on the one hand, you've got the celebration of home, and on the other, a feeling of mourning and pain. And I think that's quite true, actually, sometimes of nostalgia. And the actual disease of nostalgia reported symptoms of hallucinations of people and places missed. Later on, one remedy for nostalgia was to scare it out of you by threatening the sick with a red hot poker. So you literally got it poked out of you. And the Russians, God love the Russians, apparently preferred nipping it in the bud by burying you alive. Even in the 19th century, which doesn't actually seem that long ago, they used leeches, I love this, to suck the melancholy out of people. Thankfully for us, this is a thing of the past. And doctors soon realized nostalgia was no longer deemed a medical diagnosis. But isn't it interesting that it was seen in that way? What we now know of nostalgia is that it is an emotion, typically an emotional response to a period of time in your past. And it's quite a bittersweet emotion. I like that paradox. It's a bittersweet one that combines elements of both happiness and sadness with a sense of yearning and loss when looking back at a context of time. However, while it can be okay, I think, to take a little look down memory lane or reminisce on times gone by, it tends to be triggered, interestingly, by negative moods, such as loneliness. And when we're struggling with things we are experiencing now, we like to go back to the comfort of the past. And transition, the process of transition, is a big contributor to feelings of nostalgia. Looking for a period of time where there was stability, where we maybe felt more secure. Transitional times tend to expose in us our need for new skills. When you're going through a transition in a new job, for example, or here at the Forum, we have transitioned. So you need new understandings. There has to be growth and development. And within that can create an anxiety in us about the expectations of now. So we look back to a time where we felt more in control and felt better about things. But if we're being honest, looking back to a time like that, we will only ever really remember the times where we felt good. You don't often reminisce on the crappy times, do you? Or you felt secure and control. But it sounds so obvious when you say it out loud, but the past was once the present too. That was once the now as well. And there would have been so many other factors going on around you at that time that your brains just haven't retained that. There's so many nuances surrounding how we got to feel in control or more secure. And it won't be a big factor as we can look back with rose-tinted glasses. So you tend to kind of, let's not think about those. So are we actually oversimplifying the past? I was just talking to Jenny before, actually, in the cafe, and she was saying that sometimes you really yearn for that life to feel simple. And I think sometimes maybe that's another security in the past, that you can simplify it a bit and make it feel a little less complicated than actually it probably was. And actually maybe nostalgia needs to come with some sensible warning signs. You know, I was chatting with Heather, and some of the girls went to a club night yesterday, and I got invited to go along. And what was quite good is I could look back and go, you know what, didn't even like it then, so I'm all right, thanks. But I can look back with nostalgia at the 90s and decades of time and go, you know, it was so much easier then. I think, really, was it? Was it? Yeah, I liked the music, but I wasn't a happy person. I still had stuff going on. You know, we can really kind of romanticize these things. And in the face of instability now, does our mind reach for the positive memories of the past? But can we rely on its reliability? Is it crystallized? Do our minds arrange the past into something more well-defined and rigid and take out the nuances? Even like, as a parent, you can look back as an example of your babies. You know, my kids are getting older, and it's kind of like, I kind of yearn and miss those little baby years. But the reality was I was knackered, stressed, and it was a lot. And so you can look back and remember and think it was cute and look at the photos, but actually there were struggles then as well. So historian Stephanie Kuntz, say that one carefully, says, there's nothing wrong with celebrating the good things in our past, but memories, like witnesses, do not always tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. We need to cross-examine them, recognizing and accepting the inconsistencies and gaps in those that make us happy and proud, as well as those that cause us pain. Inconsistencies and gaps, I love that. We leave out the bits we want to, so that the narrative makes us feel better. But if we're going to look back in a healthier way and perhaps a more reflective way, then we have to be willing to cross-examine that which we are remembering. Stephanie also says that it's important to reality check our nostalgic ideas by uncovering and examining the trade-offs and contradictions that are often deeply buried in all of our memories. Was the comfort and safety of that past existence real? Or were they at someone else's expense? Would someone else from that time period remember it the same way you have? Or would they have a very different recollection of it? Even quite basic one, I was chatting with my mum the other day about Christmas, and I said, you know, I remember when I was decorating the tree with my brother, and we'd have the World's Strongest Man on in the background, and we were decorating the tree, and she looked at me. My mum is the most unsentimental person in my life. And she was like, it's not how I remember it. I just remember it was always me decorating the tree while you lot were doing other things. And actually, I romanticized a bit of time that actually for her was quite stressful. And sometimes we can romanticize it and remember and actually not really recognize that someone else might be remembering that in a much more painful way. Should we approach it with caution? Is nostalgia packaged away in its rightful place? Should it just stay where it is in the past? Or be ready to be picked up and played with a bit, but then put down again? It's knowing when to let it go. Does nostalgia become problematic when our longing leaks into the present because of some unprocessed grief? If we look back longing for what was, then we have to ask ourselves, why? What was an offer then that we feel isn't now? What is your now demanding of you that you feel you need to go back? Is there a grief to what was, maybe? Or if we spin it another way, can the past teach us something? Are there lessons to be learned if we let the grip of nostalgia go? For some, we can look back and reminisce and remember with comfort, because nostalgia can feel quite nice, actually, and we do it because of this. But are we actually oversimplifying? Brené Brown says in her book, Atlas of the Heart, I don't doubt that the bittersweet recalling of romanticizing of our history can relieve our pain or help us deal with the hard parts of life, but at what cost? I heard someone say this week on a podcast that sentimentality is the great error of our times. Is that true? Is sentimentality of longing for a past time or reliving all the good bits actually more damaging than we realize? Remember, nostalgia is a complex paradox of happiness and yearning. It's a double-edged sword. Maybe it's to the degree in which we longed for a past time. Do you look back and see the lessons and the experience that brings you to now? Or do you long to go back because that's what felt safe? So with that, I'm going to open us up to some discussion time. We'll have 10 minutes. Homecoming, homesickness. What is it that you want to come home to? What do you long to return to? What are you longing for? What are you homesick for? And what is it you're trying to stabilize in your now by longing for that which has passed? So let's have a few minutes to discuss that, and I'll come back with my part 2.
Hiroo Onoda was a soldier in the Japanese Imperial Army in World War II. He was stationed in the Philippines, and in one single battle, all of his colleagues were either killed or surrendered. But Hiroo Onoda and 3 others, they fled into the jungle. This was February 28, 1945. And they were in the jungle for several months, and then the war ended. There were leaflets that were dropped from airplanes announcing the good news that the war was done, that you could surrender, that you could lay down your arms and stop fighting. But they did not believe the announcements. They thought, this is propaganda from the enemy. And so they kept hiding, they kept striving. At the end of 1945, more leaflets were dropped, but they did not believe these either. The months turned into years. One of Hiroo Onoda's colleagues surrendered. 2 more were killed in a fight out with the police, and Hiroo Onoda was the only one left. And he continued to live as if the war was going on for 29 years. For 29 years, he failed to believe the good news that the war was over. So what happened? What happened to Hiroo Onoda? This is where the story gets really fascinating. A young man really wanted to find Hiroo Onoda. He actually was looking in this order for Hiroo Onoda, a panda, and the abominable snowman. And the first person he wanted to interact with was Hiroo Onoda. So he went to the Philippines, he walked into the jungle, and after a few days of searching for him, he found him. And he tried to convince him to leave, that the war was finished, but Hiroo Onoda said, I will not surrender until my commanding officer relieves me from duty. The Japanese government heard of this, and they sent his commanding officer, who was still alive, to the jungle to relieve Hiroo Onoda of his duty. And he walked out after nearly 30 years of being on the run, and he left for his freedom. So listen to what Hiroo Onoda wrote in his book. For the first time, I was looking down upon my battlefield. Why had I fought here for 30 years? Who had I been fighting for? What was the cause?
The discharging of your loyal soldier. What a powerful clip that is. Isn't that fascinating? And sad. I found it really sad. Like, what had I been fighting for? What was the cause? Richard Rohr's book, Falling Upwards, he talks about the discharging of your loyal soldier. So the discharging of a royal... put my teeth back in. The discharging of your loyal soldier is a ritual used by the Japanese when the soldiers were returning from World War II. They were struggling to let go. And so what they did is they brought in this ritual where the soldiers were being thanked for their service and discharged so that they could go back into everyday society and to focus on the next stage of their lives. And the clip, it shows an example of Hiroo Onoda, if that's how I say it, a soldier who was so convinced the war was still happening and so unwilling to believe anything that told him otherwise, that he stayed in hiding in the jungle and living in a state of conflict for 29 years after the war had ended. It was only when he was discharged officially from his duties that he could let go. In Falling Upwards, Richard says, "This kind of closure is much needed for most of us at the end of all major transitions in life, because we have lost any sense of the need for such rites of passage. Most of our people have no clear crossover to the second half of their own lives." And he goes on to say, "Discharging your loyal soldier will be necessary to finding authentic inner authority. When you discharge your loyal soldier, it will feel like the loss of faith or loss of self, but it is only the death of the false self, the image of what you see, and is often the very birth of the soul, your authentic inner authority. Instead of being ego-driven, you'll begin to be soul-drawn." The clip is a remarkable story on how loyalty can cause you to live in conflict way beyond what it was ever meant to. He couldn't cross over from war into peace. I described it this week to Jenny when I was talking to her about this clip as a stark example of how you can be the creator of your own stuckness and stay within an unnecessary conflict. What are you staying loyal to? Are you finding the crossover into something new hard? Discharging your loyal soldier may be necessary to finding authentic inner authority. Have you got inner authority in your life, or is something else driving you? We will all go through major transitions in life, from childhood to adulthood. Friendship transitions, work transitions, house moves, relationship changes, from parenting small children to parenting an adult. Within all these transitions come with it a need for change, for us to grow and adapt, and also to let go of what was. I was talking on the table about one of my examples of nostalgia was my stepchildren and my nephew, who I was very involved with his upbringing. And they're now young adults. And that transition of being the one that they need to then not needing so much is quite tricky. And you can really feel a sense of rejection and it's hard, that transition into parenting an adult, because you know that they're supposed to fly the nest, you know that transition's supposed to happen. But there's that part of you that was so loyal to, particularly with my stepchildren, loyal to making sure their life was comfortable, that it's almost like that's done now, and that's kind of hard to kind of let that battle go. And where we can find it hard and come stuck in our nostalgia is when we have a fierce loyalty to something. I realised this week that I'm a loyal soldier. That's one example that I just brought. I'm a loyal friend. So when my friendships evolve and transition, I can find it really hard to let go of the comfort of what was. For me, to let go of a relationship is unthinkable. And in recent years, I was in business with some friends and things broke down. And I really grieved and struggled with that for a long time because I'm a loyal friend. So for that to go was like really difficult. And I had to learn to let go and grieve that. And even currently, a friendship I hold very dear has transitioned. And I'm really struggling with the nostalgia of that, the yearning for what we had, but also like the sadness and pain that it no longer is like that. So where do I go from here? Rather than dwell on what was, I need to accept what is. We were talking about that on our table earlier. Accepting what is actually really hard, which is why we kind of like to cling on to what was. And in accepting what is, it may mean that something won't grow with me, and I actually grow apart from it. I need to find my inner authority that is able to let go. And that can make me sad and feel a little alone. So immediately I want to draw back to a time when I didn't feel like that. And in doing that, this is where we can get stuck. We want to cling on to the idealization of a time that's gone before. But if we're going to reality check, like we said before, then we have to be honest that that time wasn't all that either. And I've just managed to romanticize about it. It's not easy, so it's understandable that we can want to draw back comfort from a time that felt more secure. And it's understandable that you'd want to feel the familiar warmth of a memory. But that's not accepting what is, it's living in what was. And to me, that's a dangerous place to be. To live in the past is not living in reality. It's holding on to the ideal of a memory that you felt and you saw a certain way. I did a talk about endings back in spring, and I just want to share some thoughts on that and revisit them. When we get nostalgic, we can look back at the job, the person, the relationship, the experience, whatever that is, and we feel something. And that can make us fight the change. We don't want to let go. We don't want the change. And we feel we somehow have to stay loyal to a story or a past. You're a loyal soldier. Don't cry because it's over. Smile because it happened. Does that feel insensitive? Or is there actually a great truth in that? And in grief, we pay the price for love. But is it better to have loved and lost, to have not have loved at all? Is there a power in the imprint? When we store memories of the past, we store the emotion we felt. It might not be reflective of what actually happened, but we remember how we felt. Our memories will have some truth to them, and there is detail that is also false, and also interpretations that are neither true or false. You're looking back with a perception. It's all based on perspective, how we look at the world then, and how we look at the world now, and then how we look at the world now looking back on then. There's a lot of tricky things there. I listened to a podcast of this guy, I don't have his name to hand, I'm sorry, I can find it for you if you want it, who's studied memories for the past 25 years. And he says the brain's mechanism we use for remembering is different to the brain mechanism used for feelings. And he believes our brains are meant to forget. It's not meant to hold on to all our memories, and it doesn't store everything we've ever experienced. It couldn't possibly store every single memory you've ever had. And it doesn't store them comprehensively. So it's an unreliable narrator of our memories. You can't actually trust your memory, really. He believes because of this, we can use it to our advantage, as memories can be revised and updated as we evolve and we're able to reframe them. You can reimagine. He says the brain's job is to not live in the past, but to extract the information it needs to guide our futures. So even if you look at it from a skewy perspective, there's still lessons that you can learn from it. So biologically, our body wants to remember in order to help us grow and change, not to hold back. So it's wanting you to move forward. We've been told time and time again how living in the now is so important. Yet it seems to be our biggest hurdle. When we get stuck in our nostalgia, we're living in the past. Transitioning in life is important for our evolution, but change never feels that good. However, we must know from the past that change will become the norm one day, and the skills you learnt within that change will become the default. Then we need to move on again. It's all part of life's development. But embracing our now, I've been listening a lot to Eckhart Tolle this week and his power of now. And he's a spiritual kind of influencer leader of our time, who just believes that there's such power in the now. I mean, his stuff is, I can't even, it's another talk in itself. But there's such power in living in your now and not what's gone before and what's going to happen. But embracing our now, we can deal with what's in front of us. By tackling our now with a hold on the past, it's going to create difficulty. It's like the transformation of a caterpillar into a butterfly. It's not an easy one, but it's one of the most miraculous transformations in nature. The caterpillar's old body has to die. It literally digests itself and turns into liquid. It's broken down and reorganized. So you can reorganize your past to form something new. Then the butterfly emerges with its wings ready to fly. How can the transformation of you through the transitions of life possibly compete with the glory of the past if your loyalty is constantly somewhere else? And this is a great quote. If you get anything from today, I'd like you to get this. The danger of nostalgia is that it creates an unrealistic image of life that no present reality can compare to. The loyal soldier is your programming. It's what you've always known and how to be. It's a loyalty to that which is no longer needed for survival. How can your now compete with something that you're putting so much weight on? To embrace transformation, we have to cross the liminal space, the transitional space, the point into what's new, but we get frightened of the unknown and we stay loyal to something that's gone. We get stuck in our routines, our patterns, and our familiarity, and we come at our current state from a place of lack. This isn't how it should be. It was better before. But as a result, we end up in a state of conflict. The conflict is fighting what is with what it used to be. Because the danger of nostalgia is that it creates an unrealistic image of life that no present reality can compare to. So you will always be in conflict. How can change happen in your life and transformation if we're constantly fighting what was? Constantly measuring everything from that lens, the good old days. It's going to be really tough to enjoy your life if you can't see the joy within it now and only the joy in what was. But that isn't necessarily fact, as I've said. So in essence, you're staying loyal to a time which you've glorified under a disillusionment that was all good. So I'm going to bring us to the second part of our discussion this morning about your loyal soldier. What is your loyal soldier? Have you got one? What are you fiercely loyal to and why? And if you look under it, if you look at it under the lens of where you are now, is your loyalty to your cause holding you back from a transformation? We'll have about 5 to 10 minutes and I'll come and wrap up. Right, I'm just going to do my final part. So I always think I'm going to under-egg it and I never do. So I obviously like talking. So I'm going to wrap it up and there'll be time for coffee and chat till 12, Christoph. So for my final part, I just wanted to talk about intentional living, because I think you have to take responsibility for the change you want to see in your life. And I think the way to do that is to live a bit more intentionally. And on our table just now, like Joel was talking about his view on this, which I thought was really interesting, that it's okay to remember and look back and think, I really liked that time. But if that's making you feel a lack in your life now, then you can either let go of that or say, well, I'm going to bring that into now then. If you're missing a certain element of something that you think, well, I used to really love being creative and doing that, well, then nothing's stopping you doing that now. Like, I'm not saying you have to completely let go of everything and it has to be buried. There's some stuff that you can say, well, actually, that's a challenge to me now to change something about that now. And I was talking to Chris as well about this week, my friend Chris, and she was saying, she misses being the creativity of what she used to do at the Rock and at Q. She said, but actually, I'm okay with it because I've transferred it into something else now, and she's just doing her creativity at home when she's doing her crochet, and she's making incredible things at home, and she's really enjoying that. So, yeah, she misses that bit, but the joy that she got out of it, she's just feeding into something else. So you can do that. You can intentionally learn from the experiences of the past. But the issue is if we're always in conflict with what was, that's the issue. It's going to be problematic to then adopt new thinking and new ideas. I heard this week, it's like if you start your day with a negative thought, for example, you're always going to be coming at it on the wrong foot. The likelihood is your day is going to be hard. But equally, coming at your day from a false sense of positivity is not going to be helpful, as you are likely to be met with a lot of unmet expectations. The better way to approach life is with intent. I've got an intent. I've got an intent to be a positive person this day, or to, face my reality and my what is. And I've actually put together a bit of a list of ways to help us live more intentionally in the area of nostalgia and discharging your loyal soldier. Little clues and triggers that you can look out for maybe. Because I don't think nostalgia is so, right, okay, let's park that now. It's something that you're going to have to kind of experience regularly. And these could be little triggers that you might be going through that could help be signs. So the first one is homesickness, the good old days. If you find you are constantly looking back to a time gone by and ruminating on it, it's likely you have unprocessed grief, and there needs to be a little letting go. If you're constantly going on about the good old days, the children of Israel, they got taken out of Egypt and slavery, but then they started to not enjoy it, so they started ruminating on the past and not seeing it for that bad, actually, and I want to go back there. That's a homesickness, and if you're someone who feels like you're doing that a lot, that could be a sign that you're feeling nostalgic. Loyalty. We've talked about this already. What are you staying loyal to? And is that loyalty helping you evolve as a person or leaving you stuck in nostalgia? Lack. Are you feeling a lack? An anxiety on how to proceed? A regret? Feeling lonely? I had a situation last night where I found out some information that made me feel really disjointed from a friendship group. And I felt a real rejection and loneliness in that moment, that actually I instantly felt a lack. And so I instantly went back to romanticizing the friendships and feeling this sort of sense of loss. And that actually just made me feel worse. And it made my moment just feel like naff, when it was just information that I needed to process. But I made it something bigger because I was feeling a lack. I immediately went back into nostalgia. I'm going to go through these relatively quickly. Routine. A sign that you are in loyalty still is routine. We love routine. I love routine. It feels comfortable and familiar. And our brains of subconscious programming love it. But ask yourself, is your routine serving you now? Do I do this every week because it matters, or because it's what I've always done? You could use Q as an example here, actually. Are you coming here now because you're actually engaged and enjoying the forum, or because it's just what you've always done? Is it expanding your thinking? Are you being a creator in your story? It's comfortable and familiar. And I'm not saying that that's not okay. You can, but I'm just challenging the why of it. Why is it okay? Are you carrying a story into an arena where it doesn't really belong anymore? Operating in patterns that no longer belong in the situation you're in. So routine and patterns can be an indicator. Fear. Look. Oh, there we go. Fear. We can stay stuck in a situation because the fear of not having it is greater than the fear of being within it. As an example, we can stay in relationships that are no longer healthy. We can stay in a job that we hate or a situation that we resent. Are you staying because that's where you need to be and there's stuff to work through? Or are you staying because the thought of not having it is scary? I'm going to put up with this as the fear of not having it is greater. That's sad. I don't want you to live like that. Or me. Conflict. We've talked about this a bit already. What is your cause? Am I in conflict because it's a cause still worth fighting for? Or has the cause moved on? We can want to adopt new behaviours and patterns, but if we're always in conflict with what was, that's going to be problematic. And finally, grumbling. I was reminded of Ant's fabulous "It's Not My Destiny to Die in the Desert" talks from way back. And actually, there's quite a lot of really good stuff in that. And grumbling was one of them. Discontentment, disillusionment, deception, all the disses. Are you grumbling a lot about how things are? Is it always someone else's fault? The blame game. You're not doing it right. They need to change. You are a participant in what you are experiencing. So be willing to take responsibility for your part of this and your choices. If you're in a job you don't like, you can blame everything else and everyone else other than ourselves. You're the one in it. If you're not happy, do something about it. And I don't mean that horribly, because it might be that doing something about it is learning to adjust and accept what is. Not necessarily always about leaving, but don't grumble about it. You are the creator of your own life. And where the forum thrives is that it is our main purpose to help people take responsibility for their own lives and be empowered to think, to make changes and be creators. When we truly learn to live in the now, we become creators. And life is a lot more enjoyable that way. Self-knowledge and expanding your boundaries of your understanding is always a good thing. Experiencing the power of now and the present is about reimagining your life and embracing a new direction. There's a spaciousness and potential in that. It's where hope lies. We've just been talking about that on our table. Learn to trust the process and know when to stand your loyal soldier down. The time to stand down is when the fight is over. And the fight is over when we stop conflicting with the past, because the past can only be a guide of experience and cannot be idealized, because the now is where the power of transformation lies. So that's me for this morning. Hope you've enjoyed it. Thank you.